Welcome everybody to the third meeting of our Net Zero 2030 Hub. So we have, we run two sessions, one Australian Eastern Standard Time in the morning to allow those in the US and others to join. And we run this shorter focused evening session here, but it allows, as you can see, the guests from around the world, particularly Europe and Asia, it's a much easier time frame. So thank you so much for joining, guys and girls. So team, we're trying very hard to get rid of some of the language that we just don't even realize we use. So as a community, this is, it's been growing substantially, and we want to make sure that the input that we have in the sessions that we get together, once a month, that there is plenty of focus on learning of the things that are happening around the world and sharing that information. Hence why Michael McElligott was very kind to talk to us about some of the work that he's doing and finance and structuring and other things. And we also want to really deep dive and get into the kind of things that people are working on and some of the issues or problems that they're trying to solve on a big scale, and allow the community to really just fall in, get involved, and so forth. And I've got some incredible stories to share with you, with some as recent as 5 minutes ago, when I got called by a couple of our members who apologized for not coming because they're exhausted after a 3-day sprint of getting something done. But I'll share that with you. And I guess that what's important is they're the kind of activities and action-driven approach. That's the action-driven approach that we really want to have here, and make sure that people meet and understand who's doing what, and really start to collaborate. So having said that, are there any comments before we hand over to Michael McElligott, Anthony, or anybody else?
No. Do we maybe want to provide a context? Or sorry, Vlad, did you plan to share some of the updates before, Michael?
No, we'll have the updates afterwards. So I was going to just do a quick intro around Michael, but I think a lot of people saw the email that we sent out. Michael is a property developer focused on sustainable development. My experience with Michael through the SDGX team, and Christian, I don't think he's had the joy of meeting Michael, but I have a number of times up in Sydney. Very, very passionate about making a difference in the world, very focused on standards, very focused on finance and collaboration. SDG 17, I think he lives and breathes that SDG in so many different ways, whether it be NDIS projects through to sustainable development, and all sorts of sustainable developments that go within that spectrum. So Michael's doing a lot of work in standardization and a range of things. And one of the interesting terms, which I don't know if anyone's heard before, if you haven't, today is going to be your day. Not digitalization, but digitalization. And I'm hoping Michael will be able to explain what that is.
Thank you.
There's an L in there. So, Michael, welcome. Thank you so much. And after that, we'll just get straight into, we'll talk about the things you're discussing and talk about other projects that are happening.
Thanks, Vlad. Yeah, just thought I'd, nothing formal or anything, just a little update on what I do, and maybe you can see the mindset that has helped me be able to join great people together and great teams and what we can actually deliver. I have a bit of a different mindset for a businessman. I really think along the lines of the outcome. So businesses are just a tool like any other tool just to get a job done. So my main focus is the sustainable and equitable development of Australia, and that's on the backdrop of the built environment. I come from 20 years plus of construction all over Australia, all through all sectors and through the UK. So a few years ago, we come back and I looked into, I fell down the rabbit hole of sustainable development and the sustainability as a whole. So my main vertical is sustainable finance, development, building and construction. So I just work within that framework. We've got a digital bank that's in the market that's going through our licensing at the moment off the back of the Royal Commission. So I can't really say much about that yet because COVID set us back a year, but soon enough we'll be able to talk more about finance. From the development side, I lead with Smart Green Group. So on the back of doing all the sustainability certifications like Green Star, International Living Futures Institute, Passive House, and the NDIS, SDA, the Specialist Disability Assessors, things like eTool, Embodied Carbon Assessor, and things like this, I was able to start putting together a framework of what our built environment should be across the whole sector. And the only good change you can really do is change at scale. And I knew that on my own, I couldn't do more than a few buildings at a time. So I started partnering up with the right people. That's where I led into finance. I led into property development and partnered up with an award-winning developer as well, Stephen Chandler, who is pumped out 1,000 units master plans. And I put a sustainability lens and an impact focus on the top of that, and then down to green building. So with the Smart Green Group, we look at the larger scale developments, 30 units plus, and we look at them in isolation of what they can do, what sort of impact that they can have, and how you relate them back to the Sustainable Development Goals from the United Nations. We've also partnered up with GII, Global Impact Initiative, with Vlad, who is actually one of the Sustainable Development SDGX crew that Vlad works with Charles. And so he is a lead, United Nations lead organization, one of 41 in the world that is able to report against the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And so that's how we look at city change on that level. On Green Note, which is a smaller building development company that we have, we focus on the sustainable development of our suburban environments, because most of the waste, like 40% of all waste and everything that comes from created in industries in the built environment. And even on top of that, when it comes to all the other things from transport to food and all the rest of it, it's all done on a platform of the built environment. So our cities are really the framework of how we can create change in this world the most. And this is where the partnership comes back together. Anyone that is working in circular economy or donut economy, that's just, I think the Ellen MacArthur Foundation created that, who the speaker was last Friday. All this is played out in the built environment, so it creates the best opportunities for us to collaborate and work together. And the one thing about property development that it has over a lot of other things is it's easy route to market to create revenue, because everyone needs property. It's a thriving industry. Even in its downturn, even in when property prices slump, developers are out shopping for properties, because that's when you buy cheap land and get better return on equity. So it creates an excellent opportunity to leverage to then incorporate other development initiatives. So it might be new energy, new alternative energy routes for the built environment, from solar to any sort of new hydro systems for housing in drought-stricken areas. And any change, social change that you need done, from education to disability to social housing, you're able to leverage the built environment to create that extra revenue that you can then give investors a healthy return, a reasonable return, and put the rest into good initiatives. And you create ecosystems within the built environment with this. So as an example of this, we look at how to deliver social housing, like the Victorian government are bringing out a $5.3 billion initiative to put into social housing. So they've in a team, an advisory team on how they're going to deliver this. If you put this out into the market, developers are going to come in and give the very worst outcome, giving the worst possible housing, unhealthy homes, low value, and put communities, poor communities, or almost institutionalization of lower income people. And what ends up happening is that is a spiral effect, and higher crime, lower health, these sorts of things, and it takes away from the value of our cities and our neighborhoods. So the one thing that we look at doing is creating communities that are integrated through society. So you want mixed use buildings, mixed income, mixed opportunities for people to collaborate with themselves and build community structures that way. So this is something, when it comes to you developing for government stakeholders, the government as a stakeholder has a lot different perspective than the normal market. So it's better for the government to set a standard that we spend extra money on very good housing, healthy homes, integrated homes that produce, food crops in urban gardening and more integrated within education and socio-economic reform. Because the stakeholder as a government actually has a loss of opportunity from GDP, from an entire lost market of our community. And so we look to develop to reactivate the lower income class and put them back into society. Excuse me, I have a disgruntled pit bull that didn't get to walk today, so if you hear any barking, that's him. So that's what we do from that side. With the NDIS, the disability housing has a higher premium at the moment for the next 20 years. And we look at joining that and the offset of that higher yield income, we mix with social housing and affordable housing. Affordable housing being not lower economic, but key government workers like our nurses, our fire brigades, all people that we need close to us. We need them living within 15, 20 minutes, not commuting an hour and a half into a city. So these when these sort of packages are put together, we're able to create much more equitable environments, built environments and better cities, but also get returns for our investors. The key point when it comes to the financing side is on your projects, if you take a step back from whatever you're doing, whatever your project is, most likely it's going into a built environment somehow. It's going to be played out in our cities more than likely. Even when it comes to agriculture, ag prop and tech and everything, we can bring it a lot closer like we should be, with 70% of our with 70% of our population gravitating towards cities by 2050. So property development is a way, in collaboration with most of your projects, that done properly, you'll be able to find finance, generate finance by creating these better assets, better community engagements. You'll be able to get grants better from being able to provide this sort of information to government. So that's sort of the built environment stuff we're doing. Another initiative I've been really lucky to jump on is the Sustainable Digitalisation Project. So that's the case of, we are developing smart cities all over the world. There's about 500 at the moment in development around the world. Australia is lagging in that space, but I think it's actually going to create a bit of an opportunity for us if we don't leave it too long and fall behind the whole curve, is we're able to put safety measures and preventative frameworks in so that we're able to develop our built environments in our societies in a more equitable way. A good example of this, I don't know if anyone's seen Sidewalk Labs in Toronto, where it was a massive, massive urban waterside development, billions of, maybe 12 billion or something all up. Google, or at least Alphabet, who's behind Google, were putting in on it. And this whole thing was going to be an amazing example of what we can do from living community. And it actually fell through. And one of the main reasons it fell through was it didn't have social capital, because everyone in the environment, all the locals were like, we don't want this. We don't want our facial recognition. We don't know where the data is going. We don't know how we're going to be victimized. And that's just the normal person in the street. Then there's, when you count the less fortunate with the homeless and the disabled and other aspects of our socioeconomic landscape, there's a major risk of victimization when it comes to the development of our smart cities. On top of that, there's environmental risks and other things. So the SCP was started by a guy called Simon Carter, and it's something that we're really we're pushing. I'm actually just going to read. We created a principles, 5 principles that come off it, and we're putting that to the market for engagement for developers, for the large property trusts around the world, for governments particularly. And it's just a participatory thing where they can show that, yes, we believe in these principles. That's the first step at the moment that we're going to market with to sort of test it. We've got great industry buy-in from industry bodies here, like the Property Council of Australia, GREST, which is obviously global, RICS, the Responsible Investments Network, and a few others like FMA, facility managers. So the industry bodies are happy for it, and I think all of society does. So I'll just read these principles just so everyone can have a bit of and understanding. So principle one is clarity of purpose. The reasons for development or use of digital technology are carefully considered and made clear to users and other potentially impacted stakeholders. Principle two, whole impact. Harm associated with the use of the digital technology is avoided and social, environmental, and government benefits are sought. Principle three, benefit to humanity. The fundamental experience of being human is supported, including our dignity and human rights and the quality and health of societies and cultures such as fairness, inclusion, and diversity. Principle four, broad responsibility. The scope of responsibility for environmental, social, and governance issues associated with digital technology covers the broader systems in part of and in whole life cycle and in supply chains. And principle five, stakeholder accountability. Transparency and accountability to users and other stakeholders exists for environment, social, and government issues arising out of the use of digital technology. So that's just really basically the sort of principles that we're working on. And from this, we're very much thinking that there might be a sustainable digitalization framework that developers and government and everyone should actually sign up and develop to. And that's a way to safeguard our societies, but also very much so nudge our societies in the right direction. So we all don't want to be hit with, beacon technology advertising, data stolen from us, and the cybersecurity things. So the principles that within the framework, there's a lot more involved, but I'll just sort of keep it there. One of the other things, yeah, sorry.
Could I ask you a couple of questions? Because it's interesting that we've got a number of people here on the call as well that probably might want to ask you some things, but I'll just throw it out there initially. When you're talking about this sounds very much in line with the kind of conversation that we had with the donut economics and even more broadly the circular economy. Nich, runs the Circulist. I was just wondering, how do you see that sort of fitting in? Is this very much like the development space, the construction space aligning with that circular economy, or is it something a little bit different?
All aligning. Everything I do is on one page. It's funny you say. I'm really happy that Nick's here tonight, Nich Gonios from Circulist, because I actually joined his Circulist group and I support him wholeheartedly. So Nich, I'll just move on to Circulist now. Unless you want to speak, Nich, you want to give a quick description?
Hear your views on it, so let's go for it.
It's a test now, Michael.
Yeah, no. So Nick's come out. He started Circulist. So the theory is, obviously, it was the old industrial revolutions that got us in the mess that we're in now. It was a very linear economy on how we created things. So obviously, we're all working. We know circular economy is the way forward. Circulist, donut economy, all these are just terms. But Circulist is good because it's the focus of changing our industrialist mindset into Circulist. Not only the version one of designing out waste and work and pollution, but also version two of how we actually generate and create circular societies in the future. And again, this is back to what I'll be working on within Circulist for Nich is the focus on the development of our cities, on how I facilitate the infrastructure that is needed to create circular economies. So one of the first things we'll be implementing is micro factories, extra recycling facilities, not just digital, but electrification, infrastructure, EV, and all the rest of it. So all these things need to be mapped within a city, and how we use this as a framework that not just saves the planet and stops waste and designs out problems, but it also enables our communities and again reactivates our lower income people. We're going to an area where automation is going to absolutely, unless we get a global a universal wage, a universal basic wage across the board, we are really going to find the great divide of the haves and have-nots. And a circular economy is a way for us to feed back into that. And along with the circular economy and mindset is also regenerative design principles. And that's where we think about the natural environment. Our built environment should be implemented within our natural environment, and there'd be a feedback. If you look at some of the stuff that I also work on, Permaculture Principles, where a guy, Jeff Lawton from I think it is, yeah, he's sort of leading the permaculture movement. He did Greening the Desert, and he proved that you can go in and actually
Nich, because I was going to expand that, but maybe this is a great opportunity. Do you want to say a couple of words around that? That might be really great too.
Yeah, look, we've been probably about 2-3 months, 2 to 10 weeks young in terms of launching Circulist. It's been an amazing opportunity to get to this point. It's been about 3 to 5 years in the making after looking at the whole space with regards to circular economy and fundamental challenges that I've had with it overall. It's sort of a lot of great theories and frameworks, but we're still stuck with about 20 to 25 case studies from around the world that we're always referencing. And we're not going to scale too fast if we continue thinking in the same way or not actually doing. So the principle and the mindset around sort of a circulist is an ability to actually be able to be proudly associate with something and actually focus around the doing part of I would say circular economy, so to speak. And one of the reasons why I went about thinking about launching what we did was very much around the fact that we have live in a very, very consumption-oriented world, right? And consumption in the fact that we've got, Mad Men and the advertising and brand sector has done a phenomenal job in actually getting us to actually buy more on a much more regular basis and creating more waste over time, right? So, with 30 years of me this is my 30th year in the technology sector, I've seen the technology sector, and Vlad, we've had this conversation. We've seen the technology sector be a, leading indicator to where the rest of the world could be when it comes to bloatware, what I call bloatware software, and big tin products that have been consolidated and compressed and moved towards an as a service offering over time. And the tech sector has done a fantastic job in actually reinventing itself very fast over time, and other sectors have been relatively slow moving. So we've basically come together and produced 12 principles, and we're working through the process of trying to come up with what that means in terms of a playbook of some sort. But we're still early days in this long journey. So ultimately with Circulist, it's about trying to find a way to bring on board and build a new army of the doers trying to rebuild companies of tomorrow, basically. And just add to what Michael said, one of the things I've recognized is that too many people around the world seem to be stuck in what I'm calling version 1 circular economy, which is solving for the symptoms of our linear world. And so therefore we try and solve for the easy stuff, which is waste and recycling and right to repair and product stewardship, which are really band-aids on the overarching system. And what we should be working towards is a complete fundamental reset, which is the harder stuff to do, which is what I'm calling version 2. And version 2 is very much around building an operating model that enables us to eliminate all those symptoms that we're talking about and build what circular economy version 2 needs to be, right? In terms of regenerative in nature, dematerialization. We all know this stuff. It's just about coming up with a framework that actually could be deployed and made available for companies to build the companies of tomorrow, basically. So
yeah, and I think what's really interesting, Nich, and it's a fantastic point. I wanted to still, I guess, touch on that version 1, because it's interesting how many huge opportunities still are in that version 1 as well to deal with waste too. And I think it's really important to, I guess, highlight for those that are here and those that are going to be listening later is that, the promotion that you do with Circulist and others, yes, 2.0, but 1.0 is still critical because that's where so much impact happens. And I wanted to just, Michael and Nich, I'm not sure if you have met before, James McGregor. James, I know your video is off, so if you're there, just show me your face for a sec, just so I don't want to, put you on the spot. But I did want to ask, when you're doing the developments, Michael, are you finding that there is, like as you're talking about the suburban environments, the impact and the reuse that needs to come through, are you finding things like reuse for solar and others coming into those developments as a need instead of brand new, but actually where instead of solar being thrown out, there's areas for it to be reused. And I ask you because James McGregor and I were having a conversation when I discovered some big projects that they're involved with. And I was just wondering if that's something that you have looked at in the past when you're doing your developments.
So one of the main principles of a sustainable built environment is buildings as material banks, and we're nowhere near that. So exactly a linear economy, construction is just a dinosaur. So it's make, use, waste. Anyone, because it's not, unless you're able to show economically, or unless you've got a head for it, you'll just demolish anything that's just there. So you won't even send in most developers won't send in the recyclers or anything. Everything just gets smashed and thrown, sometimes sorted into, bricks and mortar to plasterboard to that. And that's seen as a very sustainable person. But the problem, again, on top of the material being material banks, is the technology is a hard thing for insurances and things like that. So it'd be very hard to take a product that's 10 years old, 15 years old, put it on another one and know that there's insurance is going to cover those sort of things. So there's no regulatory framework, there's no legal framework, there's no desire from the people doing the work. There's no desire from the market because they don't know any different. So there's just a total lack of education, and that's another thing that Circulist will be doing quite well. Like one of the main principles that we're working with, so to get money for funding to start all this sort of thing, I partnered up with an actuary from KPMG, who's one of the only two climate change focused guys in the country. So he's able to give, say, community housing providers a map under their portfolio to show that where the insurances are going to cost the most in which area soon. So which of their houses to divest out of the portfolio before insurances go up, and that cuts out their margin, because as community housing providers, their margins are very low. So we partnered up to look at what's the first step is sustainable development. So we go off my 5 principles are embodied carbon of the built environment, operational energy, sustainable density. So that means focusing on rather than urban sprawl to small suburbs, focusing on low-rise, medium density to medium density, and focusing that on our transit lines prioritized first, and then down to from train, cars, then the micro-mobility that we're setting into the market. Livability, which is a lot I won't even go into now, and affordability, which is something that we all need. A built environment that's affordable and fair and healthy and is not ruining the planet. And that whole framework there, and when you do that on a backdrop of where the country is going to suffer with droughts, water stresses, temperatures, and all the rest of it, from that you can ascertain things like what are you going to use as building materials, i.e. anything with paint, heat stresses are going to ruin. So you're looking at like bricks or prefabricated panels, concrete things that are like concrete, but a CLT, any of the glue lamps and those sort of more wooden sustainable products that are actually prefabbed into the BIM software, the modeling software that then goes into lists of libraries of material in our built environment. And so that's what you're touching on there, the creation of libraries of building materials and products that are live in the market, that when you go in, you can actually know that you can cost out. So it's going to cost me 50 grand to take off those panels, to take this out, to take off that. But I know the resale value of the materials in that building is 45. Well, let's do it, because there might be a carbon offset legislation then in the future that is saying, oh, well, you need to offset that anyway. So these are the ways, this is where we need to work well with government legislation, and these circulist groups and things like that are really going to drive awareness all the time.
Have you started looking at all with some of the new groups that are forming to really push this space, materials particularly, like the MECLA is really pushing. In fact, actually, James, you're involved there. Maybe you might be able to just share a few words around the kind of work that MECLA is doing, and I know you're in a particular work group. Would you like to share something there that I think is probably really relevant to what Michael and Nich are talking about?
Yeah, so I think a lot of this, this change, there's a top-down approach of trying to drive more sustainable cities, and there's a need for particularly in the building space, creating that demand. You always get this Mexican standoff where you get the building industry saying, yeah, sure, we'll build it if consumers ask for it. And consumers are asking for it, but they're using a different vocabulary. So MECLA is effectively a consortium of large groups like Lend-Lease, for example, who are coming together to try to stimulate the supply of different materials. So for example, geopolymers in concrete. So we're leading the innovation piece around trying to help commercialize low carbon building materials as part of MECLA. But the MECLA's main role really there is to create that demand piece so that when suppliers of circular solutions, so products as a service, for example, or geopolymer concrete or whatever it is, that fits into these more sustainable models, have a ready market for those products and services for them. So yeah, so there's a whole lot of market leaders that are trying to pull solutions out of the supply chain, so we don't keep doing things the way we've always done them.
Yeah. Do you see a space in those conversations for some of the reuse of, say, solar panels and things like that, or do you see that sort of like what Michael's saying, is that it's difficult to reuse that in those sort of conversations because of insurances and other things like that?
So there's already so there's a lot of conversation around reuse, so particularly around demolition. So there's already, for example, a little mini economy going around. If you just take landfill, so bulk excavation for major roadworks, they've got to shift spoil around, right? So there's already effectively a mini model for reuse of materials through just soil that they move around, say a major roads project. And they're looking at trying to expand it into, if you have, for example, Michael mentioned the BIM models, right? So if you've got a good BIM model for your building, you know exactly how much glass, aluminium, steel, concrete, reinforcing, electrical cable, copper is in that building before the thing gets demolished, right? So if you know that beforehand, then you have an inventory of the product that's going to come out of it that you then can connect to a potential reuse application. So we were involved with a project called the Digital Twins for Waste, where we're looking at using, creating these digital signatures so that that information is available. You can plug into a marketplace. So if someone wants 400 cubic meters of recycled concrete for a road at Wallara Council, and you're demolishing a building that has 400 cubic meters of concrete, you can connect those two industries immediately together, so the stuff doesn't go to landfill. But it's a massive, it's like trying to change direction on an aircraft carrier, right? Some of this stuff with the building industry, so we've got to take small steps to get them to see the economic value, and I think that's the language they talk. So if you can demonstrate an economic value, whether it be a higher value development because it's built on more sustainable principles, therefore the property values are high because people want to live there, or it's lower risk because all of a sudden it's more resilient, therefore it's less likely to incur severe insurance penalties in the future as the cyclone region moves south. You need to frame up your solutions in that way, but yeah.
Got it. Go ahead, Mark.
One of the lower barriers to entry there, and what's going to help is when we move into more prefab and modular, and that's where the bigger components can be taken out, because what we don't want is a constant down cycle. We want an up cycle or to retain value. Some of our building products are good for 150 years, and we're demoing them after 60 and just throwing it away or just putting it into landfills or roads. But yeah, so it's when we have that modular and prefab condition when you can bolt in and bolt back out everything. That's and it's working, but as James said, it's a dinosaur industry.
Yeah, Phei, can I maybe just maybe open the floor for you to comment as well? Like, at RMIT, this is an area that you guys are working on. I know there's deep technology. Did you want to just comment if you wanted to or not? Just feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, I know you mentioned recycling of solar voltaics a few times, and there is a product stewardship scheme not related to RMIT, but it's called Reclaim PV. If you want to look them up, I think they've been funded as a product stewardship scheme for waste solar cells. In terms of when you were talking, Michael, I kind of thought of a 3D printer that RMIT's gotten recently. It's like state of the art in the world. One of those, I've seen it, it's on wheels. So you take them out to the site and actually print what you want out of it. So if you're interested in accessing something like that, arrange something. And generating market demand, that's really useful, James. That's the other half of technology that you need to crack, the non-technology part of having the technology and actually getting it out there. And I know SV is trying to do a lot of that, grants on market development. I'm not sure how, what traction they're getting out of that. But yeah, lots happening. If you need more information, review articles or whatever it might be, just contact me.
Awesome. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say this is one of the main things of why we need the more bigger movements, because the breaking connection, the university guys are doing a lot. There's all these collaborations and hubs everywhere, but as a whole, industries aren't getting together. So it'll be one of these big circular industry type things that are put together, and it drives everyone to talk together, and that's where these big collaboration things are worthwhile.
Yeah, so there are mechanisms for that. So that TREMS Research Hub recently funded, that actually brought together a lot of parties from industry across supply chains, also deals with behavior change, policy change, as well as technology. So there are mechanisms for that, and they are being used, but they're really large ones that take time to kind of get established as well. But there are medium versions of that as well, where if you needed research to plug a gap in technology, you can get matching funding and range of things that support.
It's a bit of a bugbear of mine, again, being the whole let's try and recycle solar. It's a big issue we got coming. I mean, I actually, for what it's worth, actually built Australia's biggest solar lead generation business about 8 to 10 years ago, called Solar Quotes, where we probably proudly had about 20% of the solar installed on residential homes in Australia came through our marketing platforms and so forth. And in some ways I look at it and I go, wow, in 20 years time, that's actually going to be our new green e-waste issue that we're going to have to deal with, unfortunately. So with the circulist mindset, we fundamentally need to think about how we design for these types of systems, not just products that get stuck on a roof, and so that it's end-to-end solved for. So, the design aspect, the specifically circular design aspect of this is paramount in anything that we produce, especially when it comes to renewables as well, right? So where there'd be amazing effort would be to try and actually find and build organizations that actually just focused on that versus trying to get more energy out of the silicon wafers that we have in market, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I think what would be really interesting here too is that as our conversation progresses, it's good just to take note of some of the work and the projects that are available and that are happening. So, whether the work that Michael's doing, Nich, yourself, and, highlighting when Phei and the team at RMIT, we get involved on a range of different projects, whether it be, looking for grants or deep tech support. But also, James, the work with MECLA and, digital twin for waste, I didn't even realize that was a thing you're doing. I guess what is important is that as a community and the broader community that's going to be listening to this, it's so important to go, that's something I'm interested in, and actually I have something. So, like on the Friday call, I can't remember, well, actually it might have been you, James, that when Julie Green was talking about the need for seed, for planting trees, they needed, was it you, James? Or might have been somebody else.
Yeah, I actually had a meeting with Julie just before this.
It was, it's so important to identify these projects and real gaps in scaling solutions. So, how do you do the carbon sequestration with planting trees? Well, Greening Australia, Julie put on the table, from that board perspective and from an organisation perspective, they need significantly more seed as possible. And I think James immediately put up his hand saying, hey, why don't we try something else out? And this is what we want to encourage and put up, for people to go, look, I'm interested in this. Why don't we have that conversation and see what's possible? Just not to labour the point, but I wanted to extend an opportunity for Nich, Anthony, if you're there, just to expand the conversation a little bit broader. Nich, are you there? I can't see. Yep.
Yes, mate. I've got you.
Yeah. When we're talking about both the circular economy, but also communities that benefit, and how projects have multiple benefits, whether it'd be cleaning waterways and then reusing those products. I think it might be a really nice opportunity to open the floor for a couple of minutes, Nich, for you to maybe share what you're doing with your team at Earth 5R and some of those projects that you discussed with me where people could really jump in and help and support. Are you happy to have a quick chat about that?
Yeah, I will just check with Soto also if he's online. We don't have much of a chance to hear from him, so maybe Saurabh, if you could make an introduction on your work on by at the moment, and I'll kick in a little bit with some questions on the built environment for Michael.
Yeah, sure. So basically, Earth Fiber started like 6.5 years before, and it was a very humble beginning, starting right from doing local cleanup programs in the locality. We started from lake cleanups in the local area, and that's where the whole idea built up. And initially, we were just cleaning up the lakes and taking out the plastic, putting in the bin. And one day, one of the rat pickers who was actually eating from the bin, because a lot of homeless people, they eat from the bin. He was very irritated by looking at this, that why I was putting the plastic waste in the bin, because there was food for him. He asked me this question that what is the point in shifting the garbage from one location to another location? And that question opened that I realized that we were trying, like hundreds and thousands of people, we were trying to clean the beach, and actually all this waste was going to landfill. And it took an uneducated homeless man to open my eyes, to change the way we were working. And that day we learned a very profound lesson that actually these kind of cleanup programs and the way a lot of environmental work is going around the world is probably not sustainable. So yeah, that's where we learned that we need to segregate the waste, and that's how the movement started. So basically, I can say that the entire circular economy ideology that we adopted at Earth 5R, our lessons are deeply ingrained in learning from the community. Like we have not learned from professors and like scientists. We have learned from the communities, and we were always open to learning from these people because we work with these people. So that's where the entire model started. And then later on, we decided that whatever we are going to do, any project that we do, it needs to meet the triple bottom line, which means that it needs to make a social impact, it needs to make economic impact, and it needs to make environmental impact. If you're only working for the environment, and if it's not making other kind of impact, it's not truly sustainable. So we adopted a checklist sort of thing that it needs to, and then we develop a metrics where any work we do, any kind of project we are doing, we do a measurement, like in terms of carbon footprint reduction, water footprint reduction, in terms of social impact it is doing. So we have a very comprehensive checklist that we always make sure that we produce a lot of such kind of reports. So later on, our project was selected for Paris Peace Forum, where we represented India, and that's where we got the very big exposure. Like we got opportunity to present the project to many heads of nation, and then we started getting calls from many countries saying that they would like to learn from this particular model and how this model can be replicated.
And so what are some of those projects that you're able to share?
So projects. Yeah. So one thing I can do is, like, after the call, I can also send you a small document which has all of our projects to mention, like and
we'll share that.
But one of the project that is which is the most recent one that we are working, which has recently it is on Methi River in Mumbai. So Methi River is basically it is, I can say that, one of the most polluted rivers in the world. It has like unbelievable amount of plastic in it. So what we are doing is like this project has been identified by United Nations Technology Innovation Lab, and it is IoT and artificial intelligence enabled project. So basically, in which we are setting up a solar powered equipment which is completely off grid, where we will segregate, we will collect the waste right from the river. The machine works 24/7 automated machine, and it has the ability to take out 70 tons waste plastic every day from the river. And it's all completely conveyor belt driven, and then it comes on the shore, and then that's where the segregation happens. And after segregation, depending on the type of the waste, we either recycle it or some of the waste has to be pyrolyzed. We have a partnership with the Finland government, so they are taking the oil from us, like all the pyrolyzed oil. So and also the belt, like the entire community that is along the Methi River, we're working with them, where we're also doing upcycling programs through citizen engagement, and all the buildings are involved in this program, which means that we have set up bins, and they segregate the waste, which is part of the training program. And this waste is repurposed, like depending on the type of the waste, it goes either for construction industry or it goes for, upcycling, recycling. So the idea is to make the building zero waste, reduce the waste that is going in the river. And if at all it's going in the river, we collect it and we recycle. This is the project. That's the latest project.
So, have you met Christian Walter, who's on the screen here? So, he's one of my colleagues from SDGX. He's in Berlin. Okay. But the reason why I'm thinking of him specifically, some of these projects that you're working with, one of the other partners at SDGX is very heavily involved in the UN. In fact, we've got a number of people, so both Emma and David Galepo. Christian sees a lot of bleeding edge technology looking for places to trial projects. And some of them would, there'd be real opportunities. Christian, would you be happy to maybe make a time with Saurabh and have a chat?
Yeah.
I'm trying to unmute furiously here. Sorry, yeah, absolutely. Would be super happy to connect afterwards.
Sure.
We can make that happen.
So, and I guess one of the things that, and I'm mindful again, just everybody's time, I'd like to just, the last of 10 minutes, well, actually we've got a bit less than 10 minutes before we do a soft close. Everyone is absolutely welcome to continue to talk. We won't shut the call, but we do want to give everybody the opportunity to say thank you. That was it, time to go have dinner. But what I would like to do is, just in this time, maybe open it up to others who are particularly working on projects where you're seeing a gap and support needed, where you'd like people to actually come and talk to you and get involved. If you don't, I'm happy to put up some of the other dozen or so projects that people have been putting, through the teams and the community. But while we're all here, if anybody wants to maybe just put up their hand and just talk about something that they're working on that they would really be keen to talk about. Can I take somebody? Yeah, go ahead, Robin.
So this is one of the projects I'd like to get up and running. Working title is Full Cycle, and it's sort of that first horizon problem of being able to reduce landfill by making packaging reusable and durable, and being able to get it back to base. So using technology to track individual items with a QR code or an RFID and the product manufacturer puts 50 cents extra on the product, and we split that 50 cents between each person who has got the product back to base. So we can actually get the product back, refilled and sent back out. So the goal is to get an arms race in durable packaging.
So how far have you gone along that journey at the moment, Robin?
Software design, but no further.
So
it's
Matt, go ahead.
Robin, I've got a couple of guys that you can have a chat to. So John Pintana, Pintana Solutions, or the Green Care Group. Those are the guys that do all the thank you. They're the ones. There's basically three companies I deal with. They deal with the toilet paper, all the manufacturing. I know these guys for years. So happy to organise you with those guys, because if you get their sort of commitment to doing it, then you're going to get some. There's a point to actually putting it and setting it up. But these are the guys that do all the heavy duty manufacturing, and they're doing some big plants up at Shepparton at the moment, and they're expanding a whole bunch of stuff. But they're all happy to introduce you to those guys. And there's also Vlad. I introduced Vlad and to Rianju. Now she's got some technology that she's working with about scanning and transferring products. She's working with Costas at the moment. but she's also got about to sign up with Vessey and Coca-Cola. There's a couple of things there where she's actually got the packaging people that are already working with about actually moving those sort of things. So perhaps what we do is sit down and get Joe Pintana and Lucas and Harundu and Rianju and just put a bit of a breakfast together and have a bit of a chat and see where it goes from there.
Sounds good.
That's actually really great, Matt. And you know, I know Phei has also they've got the kind of researchers and scientists in the mix that will probably be able to add once to sort of get a bit of a scope of what the need might be. Is that something that you think some of your team might be interested in, Phei?
Yeah, definitely. If it's technology that's you can't find specialists for, I'll try and find them. But I wanted to mention something I came across when I was looking at reusable coffee cups. There's these guys in New South Wales, I think. It's called Green Caffeine, and they have a similar concept. Just look at to learn from. You get the coffee cup, but you subscribe, and you drop it off and gets washed. But there's also a bit of a software around that, and if you forget one, you can grab one, but you can only grab 3. So they kind of have a bit of a system. So I might have a look and see if you can learn from that.
Okay.
That's really great.
Like I say, the other one I was to mention, I don't know if you've heard of Loop as well, which is a spin out of TerraCycle. I think Woolworths are partnering with them around cereals and recyclable things. So, so is Robin, your main interest in the technology piece in how to track and optimize this to make it work, or in the actual packaging itself? So I think
some software side of the equation, and the data that comes from the fact that you know where all the packaging has been, so you've got a much clearer picture of how your product's being used, which is the primary value proposition for the supplier. Yeah,
because it might be worth putting you in touch with the guys at TerraCycle, because I know Tom Zaki, who's the CEO of TerraCycle, and as well as the New South Wales guys.
Yep.
So I could probably put you in touch with them, because I don't know that they're great at logistics and moving waste around, but I don't know they're good at I don't think the tech's their area necessarily, right, in terms of how do you track this stuff. So might be good.
That'd be good.
And I think what's really exciting too, Robin, is that for this example and others, the community is such that you look at Nich and you look at the guys at is good.ai, and we look at even the SDGX team and others, where when things get started, you can really start to promote the work at MECLA and see if there's something that fits into there, or other recycling. There's so many programs and so much interest when things get started that there's actually really amazing ability to scale the breadth of that quite quickly once you get the right team involved. Yep. Just wanted to say, guys, I just wanted to give those that need to go the opportunity to finish up. And I want to finish with 2 things. One very interesting story that on the Monday, we had one of our team members, and Matt, you're going to love this, Anthony Violi. That's right. I connected Anthony with one of our other members, Tawab, from the Sebastian group, who works with Matt Marsh and others. They met on the Monday. They scoped out their entire, grid-side battery project they've been working on, and they needed something extra. And today, 3 days later, well, really 2 full days, they've gone hard, and they've just submitted for a significant grant, which they're very sure they're going to get in order to get that to the next stage of development. So when we look at these kind of teams, and they both called me to say they're fantastic, thank you so much. And I just wanted to let you know we can't join the call because we need to go to sleep, because they've been going hard for such a year for this time. But when there's something really exciting, what is striking is just how this community
I'm glad that horse finally took the fucking water. I'll tell you that much.
But, I know you'd appreciate when you jumped on the call. I thought this is really interesting, because Matt has been, wanting, only the best success for Anthony Violi and his team for such a long time, and this is this next step. So I thought you'd particularly appreciate it. But I just wanted to use that as a great example of just how these things come together. And when the combination is right, they'll go really quickly. It happens very fast.
Matt, as Finbar O'Hanlon once said, you can take a horse to water, you just can't make it drink spilt milk.
No, but you can take a gun to its head and shoot it, and then fill it full of water. That's a great sack.
And anyone who knows Finbar Hanlon will know why that is funny. So one more thing that I just want to mention, and just to bring it to a soft close, and then we can keep talking. The next calls will be May the 27th in the morning for Australian Eastern Standard Time, and May the 31st, it'll be Christian, your morning in Europe, our evening here in Australia. So, and everything and everywhere in between. So we will share the links to this call, this video, and the Friday video, which was extremely interesting, significantly longer. That was a 2-hour session. We had a lot of regen, Melbourne, and donut economics conversations there, and lots of projects discussed. We'll share that with the dates as well and send the invites to everybody.